Last summer, a mom in Naperville, Illinois, sprayed her 7-year-old with a leading DEET-based repellent before a backyard birthday party. Standard stuff, what every pediatrician recommends, what every Target shelf pushes at eye level from May through September. 3 hours later, her daughter was in the ER with seizure-like tremors. The attending physician noted possible neurotoxic reaction. The repellent brand issued no recall. The CDC updated nothing. And that mom, like millions of Americans, had no idea there was another option growing 6 feet away in her own garden bed. That's not a conspiracy. That's a supply chain with a profit motive. And today, that ends. DEET, N-N-diethylmetatoluamide, was developed in 1944 by the United States Army for jungle warfare. It was never designed for children's skin. It was designed for soldiers moving through jungle zones in the Pacific. The Army knew it was aggressive. The label said so. Somehow, between 1946 and the suburban boom of the 1970s, a military-grade chemical repellent became the default recommendation for American families sitting on their back decks in Ohio. That transition didn't happen because DEET was the safest option. It happened because it was the most patentable one. There are 10 plants that have been repelling mosquitoes for longer than the United States has existed. Some of them predate written language. All of them grow in American soil. None of them require a prescription, a permit, or a $200 quarterly contract with a truck that shows up and sprays your children's playground while you're at work. By the end of this video, you will know every single one. And the last one, the one we're saving for the final minutes, is so effective, so cheap, and so deliberately ignored by the pest control industry that when you find out where it's been sitting this whole time, you're going to feel the specific anger of someone who's been lied to for decades. Hold on to that. We're going to earn it together. Plant number 1, lemon balm, Melissa officinalis. Look at your yard right now. If you have any unused border space along a fence line, the edge of a raised bed, a forgotten strip between your driveway and your neighbor's property, lemon balm will grow there. It will grow aggressively. It will grow without asking your permission, and every leaf it produces is a biological factory running a chemical process that mosquitoes cannot override. Here's the machinery. Lemon balm produces citronella, geraniol, and linalool, 3 volatile organic compounds that interfere directly with the mosquito's olfactory receptor system. A mosquito finds you by tracking the CO2 plume your body exhales, combined with the specific cocktail of lactic acid and ammonia your skin releases. It is a precision guidance system that has evolved over 200 million years. Lemon balm's compounds don't just smell bad to mosquitoes, they jam that guidance system at the receptor level. It's the difference between static on a radio and a signal blocker. One is annoying, the other makes the radio useless. A 2011 study published in the Journal of Vector Ecology confirmed that lemon balm essential oil demonstrated significant repellent activity against Aedes aegypti, the mosquito species responsible for dengue, Zika, and yellow fever. You can grow a full border hedge of it for under $8 in seedlings. Your neighbor's quarterly spray costs $200 and has to be reapplied every 90 days. Lemon balm compounds year over year. Think about that. The next plant on this list works through a completely different mechanism, and it's one that the agricultural chemical industry has been quietly trying to synthesize in a lab for 30 years. They haven't cracked it yet. The living plant does it better. Plant number 2, citronella grass, Cymbopogon nardus. Most Americans know citronella from the candle. That's the tragedy. The candle is a diluted, heat-degraded paraffin wax approximation of what the actual plant does at full biological capacity. Buying a citronella candle instead of growing citronella grass is like buying a poster of a guard dog instead of getting the dog. Citronella grass grows in clumps up to 6 feet tall. In USDA zones 10 through 12, it's perennial. It comes back every year without replanting. In colder zones, you grow it in a large container and bring it inside before first frost. Either way, one mature clump covers roughly a 30-foot radius of repellent activity in open air. Not candle radius, not a 3-foot bubble around a burning wick, 30 feet. The active compound, citronella, the same base compound that manufacturers try to extract for spray products, is released continuously by the living plant through its stomata. Every time wind moves the grass blades, the release intensifies. Your yard becomes a slow-motion diffuser that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at zero operating cost. Citronella grass has been used in Southeast Asian agricultural communities for over 2,000 years as a perimeter crop. It was documented by Dutch colonial botanists in Indonesia in the 1600s as a standard tool of rural household defense. That knowledge crossed the Pacific. It was used in early American homesteads, and then in the 20th century, it was quietly reduced to a candle that burns for 4 hours and sells for $6.99 at CVS. That's not evolution, that's replacement. Plant number 3, lavender, Lavandula angustifolia. In the summer of 2019, the Kellerman family in Brentwood, Tennessee paid $1,800 for a seasonal mosquito treatment package from a regional pest control franchise. The treatment involved bifenthrin, a synthetic pyrethroid sprayed across their half-acre backyard every 3 weeks from April through October. By August, their golden retriever had developed a skin condition the vet flagged as possible chemical contact dermatitis. Their garden tomatoes showed stunted growth consistent with pesticide drift, and the mosquitoes? Back within 10 days of every spray. By October, they had spent $1,800, lost their tomato crop, and had a sick dog. Their next-door neighbor, a retired school teacher who had planted a 40-foot lavender border along her fence line 3 years prior, reported zero mosquito pressure all summer. The Kellermans didn't know about the lavender. Nobody told them. Lavender's repellent mechanism is built around linalool and camphor, compounds that attack the mosquito's nervous system on contact, not proximity, contact. A mosquito that lands on a lavender flower receives a direct neurological disruption that overrides its ability to continue the feeding sequence. It doesn't just dislike the smell, it physically cannot complete the bite. Lavender grows in every USDA zone from 5 through 9 with no special treatment. It survives drought. It survives poor soil. It thrives on neglect in a way that a $200 per quarter pest control contract categorically do not. A mature lavender plant lives 15 to 20 years. That's 15 to 20 summers of compounding defense from a single $6 nursery purchase. Run that math against the quarterly spray contract, and you'll understand why nobody in the pest control industry has ever handed you a lavender seedling. What comes next is a plant so aggressive in its chemistry that early American settlers used it as both a repellent and a weapon against crop pests simultaneously. It grows like it has something to prove, and it does. You've made it further than 90% of homeowners who will spend another summer paying someone else to poison their yard. Stay with this. Plant number 4, rosemary. Rosemary doesn't look like a weapon. It looks like something your grandmother kept in a terracotta pot by the kitchen window. That's exactly what it is, and that grandmother knew something the pest control industry has spent 60 years trying to make you forget. Rosemary produces 1,8-cineol, alpha-pinene, and camphor in concentrations that are measurably toxic to mosquito larvae at the water surface level. This isn't just about repelling adult mosquitoes from your skin. Rosemary planted near standing water, near bird baths, near drainage areas, near the low corner of your yard that holds moisture after rain, actively disrupts the larval development cycle. You're not just blocking the adult, you're collapsing the next generation before it can fly. In colonial American kitchen gardens, rosemary was planted at the corners of every herb bed as a perimeter defense. It wasn't decorative placement, it was structural, the same logic as posting sentries at the corners of a fortification. The plant's volatile compounds create an invisible perimeter at ground level that adult mosquitoes register as a threat zone. They reroute. They find someone else's yard. Specifically, they find the yard of whoever didn't plant rosemary. Rosemary is hardy to Zone 6 with minimal winter protection. In Zones 7 through 11, it is fully perennial and will grow into a dense shrub up to 4 feet tall and wide over 5 years, a living wall that requires nothing from you except occasional pruning. Compare that to a $200 spray. Compare it honestly. The next plant operates at a scale that makes rosemary look like a scout. It has been weaponized by indigenous communities across 3 continents, and the compound it produces has never been successfully synthesized in a laboratory at equivalent biological effectiveness. Big Ag has tried. The plant wins every time. Most people who watch videos like this one stop at the surface. They learn the name of a plant. They maybe buy one at Home Depot. They put it on their porch in a plastic pot and feel good about it for 2 weeks. Then the pot dries out, the plant dies, and by July they're back on the phone with a pest control company scheduling another spray. That's not your story. The fact that you're still here, past the first 4 plants, past the sales pitch of every chemical brand that's ever sponsored a backyard barbecue segment on morning television, means you're operating at a different level. You are the 1% of homeowners who actually wants the full picture. This next section is built for you. Because what we're about to get into isn't just about mosquitoes anymore. It's about understanding exactly how much money has been extracted from American families by keeping this knowledge off the mainstream radar. We're talking billions, and the plants that interrupted that cash flow have been sitting in nurseries, in catalogs, in forgotten corners of botanical history, waiting for someone to pay attention. Pay attention. Plant number 5, basil. Basil is the most underestimated plant in the American backyard. Everyone grows it for pasta. Nobody grows it for what it actually does at the chemical level, which is produce a rotating library of volatile compounds, including eugenol, linalool, citronellul, and methylchavicol, that shift in concentration depending on temperature, humidity, and the time of day. This is not a static defense system. This is an adaptive one. As afternoon heat peaks, exactly when mosquito pressure spikes in the eastern United States between 4 p.m. and dusk, basil's eugenol output increases by measurable degrees. The plant is essentially running a temperature-calibrated repellent schedule that aligns with peak mosquito activity without any human intervention. Think of it as a thermostat-controlled security system that activates precisely when the threat level rises. No app required, no subscription fee, no technician visit. A 2009 study in the journal Parasitology Research found that basil essential oil showed 100% repellency against Culex quinquefacius, the primary vector for West Nile virus in the continental United States, for a period of up to 6 hours. 6 hours from a plant you can buy in a 4-pack at any farmer's market in America for $3. West Nile is not a minor inconvenience. In 2022, the CDC recorded over 2,600 cases of West Nile marrow-invasive disease in the U.S. The economic cost of hospitalization per patient runs between $20,000 and $60,000. Basil costs $3. Connect those two facts and let them sit with you for a moment. Plant basil in clusters near your outdoor seating areas, near your children's play structures, near the back door. Crush a leaf between your fingers and rub it on exposed skin before you sit outside. You've just made a real-time topical repellent from a plant that also makes your dinner better. The pest control industry has no equivalent product at that price point. They never will. The next plant was carried across the Atlantic by colonists who understood exactly what it did and was systematically reclassified as a decorative ornamental in 20th century American landscaping guides. That reclassification was not an accident. Plant number 6, marigolds. Here's the dollar value the industry buried. Marigolds produce a compound called pyrethrum, a natural insecticide so effective that the entire synthetic pyrethroid pesticide industry, worth over $3 billion annually in the United States alone, was built by attempting to replicate it in a laboratory. Bifenthrin, permethrin, cypermethrin, every synthetic pyrethroid your pest control technician sprays on your lawn is a chemical imitation of what marigolds produce for free in your garden bed. The imitation is profitable. The original is not. That's the entire business model. Marigolds have been used as companion plants in agricultural systems for over 400 years. Aztec farming records, documented by Spanish colonial botanists in the 16th century, describe deliberate marigold border planting around crop perimeters as standard pest management practice. That knowledge traveled to Europe. It traveled to colonial America. It was standard in American kitchen garden manuals through the early 20th century. And then, as the synthetic pesticide industry scaled after World War II, using the same organophosphate chemistry developed for nerve agent production, marigolds were quietly repositioned in the cultural imagination as a decorative annual, something you plant because it looks cheerful near your mailbox, not because it runs a continuous chemical deterrent operation that requires zero infrastructure. A flat of marigolds costs $8 at any garden center. A year of quarterly synthetic pyrethroid treatments costs between $400 and $800 depending on your lot size. The flat of marigolds produces the base compound. The $800 contract produces an industry imitation of it. The person who figured out which one to sell you built a $3 billion industry. The person who grew marigolds built a garden. In Savannah, Georgia, Marcus and Diana Reyes spent 3 consecutive summers fighting with their pest control company called an unusually aggressive mosquito population on their quarter-acre property near a tidal drainage channel. Year 1, $600 treatment package. Year 2, upgraded to a $900 misting system installation plus refill contract. Year 3, added a larval treatment program for an additional $340. Total spend over 3 years, just over $2,400. Mosquito pressure remains, by their own description, completely unmanageable through July and August each year. In year 4, a neighbor suggested a specific border planting strategy. They put in lemon balm, basil, marigolds, and the plant we're about to cover, planted in a continuous perimeter around the property's moisture-prone edges. Total plant cost $47. That summer, for the first time in 4 years, they ate dinner outside in August. Nobody sprayed anything. The $2,400 machine had been replaced by a $47 worth of seedlings and information that the pest control industry had zero incentive to provide them. Plant number 7, peppermint. Peppermint has an active compound called menthol, which is so effective as a neurological disruptor for mosquitoes and other biting insects that it has been studied as a larvicide, an adult repellent, and a contact insecticide simultaneously in peer-reviewed literature spanning 4 decades. It operates on 3 fronts at once. Most chemical products are engineered to do one of those 3 things. Peppermint does all 3 and then spreads aggressively through underground rhizomes to cover more ground than you planted it on. It expands its own defensive perimeter without instruction. Plant peppermint in containers if you want to control its spread, and you probably will because it moves fast. A single 4-inch pot planted in spring will colonize a 3-foot diameter circle by August. In 2 seasons, it will have sent runners under your garden path and emerged on the other side. This is not a passive plant. It behaves like something that has a purpose and intends to fulfill it. Crush a handful of peppermint leaves and place them near your outdoor vents, your window screens, your basement egress windows. The menthol vapor creates an entry barrier that mosquitoes register as a threat at a distance of several feet. Your house begins to function as a repellent structure rather than a target. That is a fundamental shift in how you relate to your outdoor environment, and it costs you a $3 mint plant and 10 minutes. What comes next operates at a scale that none of the plants we've covered so far can match. It doesn't just repel, it kills at the larval stage with a biological efficiency that university entomology departments have been studying for over 2 decades, and what they found should have made front-page news. It didn't. You'll understand why when you hear the numbers. You've now crossed into information that less than 1% of American homeowners will ever act on. The gap between you and the person still signing the quarterly spray contract just got significantly wider.
You've been patient. You've stayed when most people clicked away. And that patience is about to pay off in a way that will fundamentally change how you think about the ground beneath your feet, the plants growing in it, and the industry that has been standing between you and this information for the better part of a century. But before we get to the final reveal, the one we've been building towards since the first minute of this video, there are 3 more plants that deserve their full accounting. Because the story of mosquito defense in America is not just a story about bugs. It's a story about who profits when you don't know what grows in your own soil. Every plant on this list is a direct financial threat to a multi-billion-dollar industry. The fact that you know their names now makes you dangerous to that business model. Hold that. Plant number 8, lantana. Lantana camara. Lantana looks like something you'd find on a greeting card. Clusters of tiny flowers in orange, yellow, pink, and red, arranged in perfect geometric rounds. It is aggressively pretty. It is also, at the biochemical level, one of the most hostile environments a mosquito can attempt to navigate in the continental United States. A 2012 study published in Parasitology Research tested lantana essential oil against 3 of the most medically significant mosquito species in North America, Aedes aegyptus, Anopheles defensi, and Culex quiquefasciatus, the vectors for Zika, malaria, and West Nile, respectively. Against all 3 species, lantana oil demonstrated repellency rates above 94% at moderate concentrations. 94%. That number puts it in the same performance bracket as DEET at standard consumer concentrations, except lantana grows in the ground,
flowers from spring through fall, requires no reapplication schedule, and does not carry an FDA warning about potential neurotoxicity in children under 12. Lantana is perennial in USDA zones 8 through 11 and grows as a vigorous annual everywhere else. In warm climates, it becomes a woody shrub up to 6 feet tall. In a single growing season, it produces thousands of flower clusters, each one running its repellent chemistry continuously through the heat of summer, exactly when 80s aegypti pressure peaks across the Gulf Coast, the Southeast, and the urban corridors of the Mid-Atlantic. Plant it in full sun along your property's southern exposure. Let it run. It knows what it's doing. The next plant was used by Native American communities across the Great Plains as both a topical repellent and a ceremonial smoke for repelling insects from living spaces. It survived 10,000 years of North American summers without a patent. The chemical industry noticed. What happened next is one of the quieter scandals in the history of agricultural commerce. Plant number 9. Sage, Salvia officinalis. Sage has 2 modes of operation, and most Americans only know about one of them. The culinary mode, the dried leaf in the spice rack, the stuffing at Thanksgiving, is the version that survived the 20th century's reduction of plant knowledge into product categories. The defensive mode is the one that got buried. Burn sage. That's not mysticism, that's applied entomology. The combustion of sage releases a dense concentration of thujone, camphor, and 1,8-cineol in a smoke that is directly toxic to mosquito respiratory systems. Indigenous communities across North America burn sage bundles at the perimeter of camp and living areas for exactly this purpose, not for ceremony alone, but for survival in environments where mosquito-borne illness was a genuine mortality risk. The Lakota, the Cheyenne, the Comanche, communities living on the plains where standing water and biting insects were seasonal constants, integrated sage smoke into their daily environmental management as deliberately as a modern homeowner installs window screens. Growing sage as a living plant provides continuous volatile release through its leaf surface, thujone concentrations high enough to register as a repellent barrier within a 15-foot radius of a mature plant. Burning dried sage bundles during outdoor evening hours intensifies that effect by an order of magnitude. A single sage plant costs $4. A bundle of dried sage for burning costs $3 at any health food store in America. The pest control truck costs $200 and leaves a chemical residue on your children's swing set. Here is where the financial crime becomes visible. In the early 2000s, at least 2 major agricultural chemical companies filed patents attempting to isolate and synthesize thujone-derived compounds for commercial insecticide development. The patents were filed, the research was funded. The synthesis was never commercially viable at a price point that could compete with the living plant. The projects were quietly abandoned. The companies moved on to other synthetic development pipelines. The sage kept growing. In the summer of 2021, Jennifer Castillo in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, canceled her family's $840 per year mosquito barrier program after her youngest son developed a persistent skin rash that his pediatric dermatologist linked to repeated synthetic pyrethroid exposure. She had no alternative plan. She had a quarter-acre backyard that backed up to a drainage canal, one of the highest pressure mosquito environments in the continental United States. She spent 3 weeks researching. She planted lantana along the canal-facing fence line, sage and basil near the patio, and, on the recommendation of a retired LSU horticulture professor she found through a local gardening forum, the plant we're about to reveal in the final minutes of this video along the property's 4 corners. That first summer post-spray was, by her account, the most comfortable outdoor summer her family had experienced in 6 years of living in that house. Her total plant investment? $61. The rash cleared up by September. You are now in the final 2 minutes of information that the $3 billion synthetic pesticide industry has had 80 years to make sure you never assembled in one place. This is the convergence point. This is why you stayed. Plant number 10, the final boss, catnip. In 2001, researchers at Iowa State University published findings in the journal Science that should have restructured the entire consumer mosquito repellent market in the United States. The findings were peer-reviewed. The methodology was sound. The results were unambiguous. Napatolectone, the primary volatile compound produced by catnip, was found to be approximately 10 times more effective than DEET in repelling mosquitoes in laboratory settings. 10 times. Not marginally better, not comparable, 10 times more effective than the compound that has been the industry standard recommendation for American families for over 50 years. The study was published, it was covered briefly in Science Press, and then the consumer market did essentially nothing with it. DEET remained the recommendation. the pest control industry continued scaling, the catnip sat in the pet aisle of every PetSmart in America, labeled as a toy for cats, selling for $2.49 a bag. Here is the biological machinery behind that number. Napatalectone binds to mosquito olfactory receptors with a binding affinity that physically prevents the detection of human scent markers, CO2, lactic acid, skin volatiles, which mosquitoes use for host location. It doesn't just interfere with the signal the way DEET does, it occupies the receptor completely. The mosquito's guidance system doesn't malfunction, it goes offline. The difference between DEET and the patalectone at the receptor level is the difference between jamming a radio frequency and removing the antenna entirely. Catnip grows in every USDA zone from 3 through 9. It is drought-tolerant, deer-resistant, and perennial. It spreads readily, planted in contained beds if you want to manage its footprint, and a mature catnip plant produces napatalectone continuously through its leaf surface from late spring through first frost. You can harvest the leaves, dry them, and steep them in a carrier oil to make a topical application that costs you nothing beyond the time it takes to make it. You can plant it at your property's corners, along your fence line, near your children's play area. You can burn dried catnip the way you burn sage and achieve a smoke-dispersed napatalectone barrier across your entire outdoor space. It has been in the pet aisle the whole time. $2.49, 10 times more effective than DEET, peer-reviewed, published in Science, and not one major pest control company has ever handed you a packet of catnip seeds and said, "Here, this works better than what we sell." They never will, because the day you plant catnip in your yard is the day you stop being a customer. That is the complete picture. 10 plants, 0 permits, 0 quarterly contracts. The knowledge your great-grandparents carried that got systematically replaced by a product category built on a compound developed for jungle warfare is now yours. What you do with it is the only thing that matters. Plant something this weekend. Start with one. Start with the $2.49 bag in the pet aisle if that's what you've got. Put it in the ground. Let it do what it has always known how to do. Reclaim what grows. If this video changed how you see your yard, the next one will change how you see your medicine cabinet. We go deeper next time. Subscribe so you don't miss it.